Cafecitos with the Plug. I'm Ruth Young-Loaeza here with Frank Carbajal. Please follow us, and I'm the CEO of Genius on Development and the inventor of the Need Sheets. Today we have an amazing and a special guest. Is Frank Carbajal. I'm gonna read the bio, and I have to kind of just make it as short as possible because Mr. Carbajal, we can spend the whole half an hour speaking about your great background. So Frank Carbajal is founder and president of Tiempo LLC, It's Time, founder of the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit, which brings the top talks leaders throughout the country to Stanford University. Frank is also the co-author of Building the Latino Future Success Stories for the Next Generation. And he's the co-author of El Futuro Latino, which is published in 14 Latin American countries, including Mexico. Frank was part of the famous management gurus Ken Blanchard's network of keynote speakers. Frank Carbajal provides small business owners, CEOs, executives, managers, and directors with the framework and tools necessary to achieve their personal best. Frank is on the advocacy committee of the Silicon Valley Education Foundation. Frank received the 2013 Father of the Year Award by Building Peaceful Families. Frank was also awarded the 2013 Portraits of Success by the Hispanic Development Corporation. Frank also received what he calls one of his most proud moments, being inducted into the East Side Hall of Fame for all of his dedication and leadership in the East of San Jose. Mr. Carbajal holds an MA with an emphasis in human resources management, and his wife, Molly, lives in Santa Clara, and Frank is most proud of his 3 daughters in the Santa Clara, California area. As Frank envisioned 14 years, es tiempo. It's time for all Latinos to lead. Thank you so much for being with us. There is so much that I want to ask you. You have done so much contribution in the Latino community, and you wrote this book called Building the Latino Future Success Stories for the Next Generation, right, in 2009. So I would like for you to share with us what inspired you to write that book, and what are you looking to give us as a Latino community, the contribution, the reason why you wrote the book, how you came up with it.
Well, thank you, Ruth. Thank you for having me as your guest today. I first want to thank you for the wonderful introduction. One thing, I was raised, with humility by my mom and dad. So, I was raised to really be honored and blessed to have just my name being called Franco Francisco Carbajal. But I really appreciate the wonderful introduction. I mean, out of that introduction, what I'm most proud of is the 2013 Father of the Year, because life for me is about being a parent, being a husband, and the accolades are all great, but that's the most important thing for me. And it is so important for me because my parents, both immigrants from Mexico, both unfortunately passed away. My mom a year ago on the day of the Virgen de Guadalupe, which was her favorite day of the year. Oh, wow. So I say it wasn't a coincidence. It was actual naturally powerful in terms of the divine intervention of my mom going to the heavens. And my dad passed away 3 years ago. But what I remember from my parents is the wisdom of really always remembering our roots, where we come from, and being humble but hungry. And my dad always taught me to respect all folks on the face of this earth that really strive to give back. And with my dad, he retired as a janitor, and he always reminded me that, my DNA was really made up of lechuga, fresas, and a mop and a broom because of the humility of the work that they did. So for me, I think in school, when I really experienced the inequity, the inequality, and President Biden just called for an executive order yesterday for equity across America. And it really is about brown and Black communities, because where I grew up in the Latino community, the brown community, I first experienced the inequities in terms of the public transportation from the barrio where I lived in East San Jose to Cadwalder, which is in a beautiful evergreen area. And they never claimed that they're part of the East Side. They always said, oh, Evergreen. I said, why Evergreen? This is still the East Side. But it was different. It was almost separated, like it wasn't a railroad track. It was separated by lights, and the lights of going up to a hillside where the school lied in this enclave of beauty. And when I saw that for the first time, I noticed that the non-Latinos, the white kids, would really look at us like we were foreigners. And, you know, I'm first generation, I was born here, but I could see the look. And I could remember my mom siempre dijo, no te dejes, don't let anybody get to you. And with their resiliency and how they worked as migrant workers, I didn't let that bother me. Instead, I let it fuel me with passion. And from middle school, I excelled in a sport, in track and cross country, that and in high school. And my mentors, ironically, they weren't Latino. They were two white men. The first one was Mr. Clavery, who I spoke at his eulogy in 2014. And then the other in high school was Mr. Kilkenny, who's a dear friend of mine. They believed in me, and they noticed that I would see the inequities and the inequalities going on, but I figured it out. I figured out the only way to equalize and to accelerate my life was through a formal education. With that, I didn't have a roadmap in high school to apply for taking the SAT and applying for a four-year college, but I started at a junior college, and at a junior college, that's where I met my network of gente, of people that were part of it was called enlace. Enlace is, you know, in Spanish, it really is a network of individuals, yes, tight knit, to really propel, to accelerate. And right there, I learned the path to matriculate classes, to transfer to a four-year college. And when I transferred to San Jose State, I didn't really know what to major in. And I said, oh, well, maybe I'll major in Spanish, porque español era mi primera idioma. But when I was in the Spanish courses at San Jose State, I said, oh my goodness, there was literally folks, transfer students from Mexico, Central America, the South America, you know, just really, really straight A students. And I said, oh man, I want to get good grades. I don't know if Spanish is the program that I should major in. And so I met with a counselor at San Jose State, an advisor, they call him. And he said, you know, maybe social work, because you really are a giving person. And so my undergrad was in social work. And after I finished that, I did go into a master's program at San Jose State in social work, but I had to take a leave of absence because at that time, my dad was working in a cannery, una canería, and a lot of migrant workers, immigrants, through the Bracero program that moved up north, whether it was Santa Clara County or other counties throughout the central area, had canneries. So my parents, you know, noticed that most of the canneries from the South Bay were going to move to the Central Valley. So my dad was out of a job.
Wow.
At that point, I couldn't focus. So I took a leave of absence to get a full-time job to help my dad out. And then a year later, I went back to school. I got my master's in human resources management.
Wow.
But after I finished, in 2001 is where my light really lit within my head of the inequities, the inequalities, and things I saw in terms of my journey to get a college degree. It was a struggle, and I was one of the first, and I was the first in my family. But when I say one of the first, I'm talking about my entire community where I grew up and in East San Jose. I didn't really know many others, maybe two. And I just said, you know, it's really time to think of putting this on paper and publishing it and writing a book. So in 2001, I did a Google when Google was, you know, first new in the early 2000s. And I Googled my friend from college, Harold LaFall, and he wrote a book on predominant, dominant Black CEOs, entrepreneurs. So I got a hold of Harold, and Harold at that time was living in Atlanta. He's like, he would call me Brother Frank. He's like, Brother Frank, oh my goodness, how you doing? I said, good. And I said, man, I'm very inspired. You wrote a book. I said, we were in the same classes together, and he and I were the only folks of color in the class.
Wow.
And when I say that, I really mean it in terms of brown and black, where
Yes.
we were the only two. And he says, you know, Brother Frank, you got to write a book on Latinos. Hispanics is the future. And I said, you know, I do, but how do I start? He's like, well, you're part of a network right now. It was known as the National Society of Hispanic MBAs. He's like, see if you could interview, now it's Pro Hispanica, interview some of those folks in that network. And sure enough, I did, and it grew to where I interviewed folks throughout the US. And in 2008, I was lucky that it was a hard journey because, you know, I'm not a celebrity, or I'm not a famous politician. So a lot of the editors would say, who are you? And I said, well, I'm going to be somebody. And I believed in myself.
Yes.
And why I say that is because when I was writing the book and I was mentioning it to my dad in the early 2000s, I said, Papá, quiero escribir un libro. He's like, mijo, ya es tiempo. It's time. So,
Oh, whoa, wow.
that's my dad's soul. But it really came all together. And in 2007, 2008, I formed an LLC. 2008, my book was published. And in 2009, the Spanish book, El Futuro, was translated and published in 14 Latin American countries. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. So you are writing right now another book, right?
Yes. I'm
Or are
working
you
on.
done with it? You still?
No. I just started. You know what inspired me was under COVID-19. You know, I don't know how long we're going to be. You know, not only in shelter in place, but in terms of things opening up, and my summit will happen, but I have to keep postponing until things are safe again. So during this time, I thought of writing a book, and the book is really on the digital divide and the
Oh,
equity.
yes.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, actually, that was one of my questions about the summit. If you I wanted you to share with us about the it's called the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit.
That's right.
Uh,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, I really like this question because it really transformed from the book, Building the Latino Future, Success Stories from the Next Generation. And it really is something that kind of is circular in terms of our time today. You know, we had to pivot in terms of COVID-19.
Yes.
Most folks became creative in doing what we're doing today, webinars, podcasts, hosting things where we're not going to lose momentum. We're going to gain momentum. We're going to deliver messages.
Yes.
So in 2008, 2009, there was a market crash. And the market crash, what happened was, you know, Jeff Bezos really started swallowing up all the border books and Barnes and Noble, and everything was going through Amazon, and everything goes through Amazon. And so in 2009, I was just a year into the publication of my book, Building a Latino Future, a couple of months into the Spanish book, El Futuro Latino, which I have, and it was right here. I'll show you. El Futuro Latino. And so I didn't want to lose steam. I didn't want to lose momentum. So in my book, I have a lot of folks who are in my network, but some I consider what I call executive mentors. And one in particular, his name is Dick Gonzalez. And Mr. Dick Gonzalez, who I highly admire, I said, Dick, you know, it's interesting that folks are slowing down to buy my book because, you know, the Barnes and Noble that was open recently is closing. What would you recommend? He's like, well, you know, these are the times where a lot of folks want to have access to a lot of these thought leaders. Have you thought of having a leadership summit? And I said, well, that would be great. But who would be some of my speakers? He's like, you have all the speakers, you have the recipe, you have folks in your book, ask. He's like, I'll be one of your first speakers. Wow. And he's highly credible, highly respected in the business community. And so that's how it really opened up the doors. Not only that, but Ken Blanchard really helped in terms of his name as far as executive sponsors and looking at his name and showing that there's a lot of credibility to start a leadership summit. So the first summit was born in 2010 on Sand Hill Road, which is the venture capital mecca of the world. And then the following year, from the second annual to the 10th annual, which was last year, 2019, almost 2 years ago, was at Stanford. So the summit that's going to happen outgrew Stanford. So it's going to the Computer History Museum, which is a much larger facility. And it's right next door to Google headquarters, world headquarters. Wow. On Shoreline Boulevard.
Wow. So, but why did you start at this summit? What was the purpose?
The purpose really is to see that there are a lot of individuals that in terms of networking, I don't like to say so much networking. I like to say, as my brother Antonio Tejerino says, building relationships. And in terms of building relationships, it's hard to build a relationship if you just email someone or send them a message on LinkedIn. And I figured that it was more important to bring people together under one roof for 250 thought leaders, to have individuals that are millennials and the future Generation Z to really tap individuals on the shoulder and say, hey, I not only admire you, but could we have, you know, coffee sometime? Could we talk? And that's how you really form relationships. You form relationships person to person, interfacing. And it's and it's a time, of course, right now, excuse me, where we're virtual, but at the same time, once things are safe again, we're going to be able to meet in person. So I really felt that it was important to really bring people together. And that was my motivation and inspiration to really form the summit in person.
Wow. You have done so much work in the Latino community. You have invested, for what I have find out, you have invested so much of yourself into it. And even I encourage people that are watching to follow Mr. Carbajal on LinkedIn. You have this inspirational thing that you do every day, the 365 Latino Leader Spotlight. And I love that, learning how much the Latino people is contributing. And you focus in general in all Latinos from past and present. And so that's great. You're teaching us to appreciate what we have, and others paving the way to do amazing things. So
yeah, I want to share why it's important to share the 365 Latina leader, 365 Latino leader. What it was inspired by, Ruth, and for audience listening in, is because every year they highlight and showcase for Hispanic Heritage Month, Latino Heritage Month, Latinx Heritage Month, from September 15th to October 15th. And they dedicate it for a month. And I said, you know, if corporate America and government officials and officials throughout the United States try to dictate our month and pigeonhole us and put us in a box for a month, then it's going to be like putting a pacifier on a Latino or a Latina and say, oh, you know, we supported your efforts and we celebrated your heritage for a month. I say enough is enough. Es tiempo every day to showcase our leadership, because the leadership summit is really based on principles of leadership never dies, leadership always succeeds, leadership is sustainable, leadership is about us. And so for me, it's important to highlight and showcase Latina leaders, Latino leaders that people who are white or other communities have never heard of. And they're like, whoa, I didn't know, you know, Jim Plunkett and Tom Flores, for example, today, who I mentioned, aren't in the Hall of Fame, and they won 2 Super Bowls each. And you have all these other white coaches that have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. I call that systematic racism. And so, es tiempo, enough is enough. That's why I do it. And that's why I am so inspired every day, because I do listen to my mom and dad up in the heavens saying, Frank, it's your time to, you know, really speak your mind.
Yeah, you also have your podcast called Es Tiempo, right?
Yes, good question. So it was with Es Tiempo with Frank. Now it's a new format with a gentleman by the name of Jesus. And Jesus and I are going to have our next show on February 5th, which is a week from tomorrow. And it's really going to highlight and spotlight Latina leaders and equity in the Latina community. So I really want everyone to tune in. And I'll post it tomorrow for a reminder a week out.
Yeah, so that's great. Thank you. I have seen those in the amazing leaders that you have invited, and I was so inspired. Actually, my husband, which is African American, he says black, call me black. So he was amazed to see all of these people that you have interview, and it's just amazing, and how many of these people, including you yourself, are very invested in mentoring the youth and young people. So wow. Since you mentioned about the Latinas, I know you have 3 daughters, and
Yes.
wow. So what advice, right now we're living in these crazy times with COVID-19, and the shelter in place. We don't know when we're gonna go back to normal, if that ever happens. What would you advise to a entrepreneur, a business, a small business owner, or a founder to do right now, to not only make sure that they're stay, above the situation? I don't know if you have anything that would you.
Yeah. One of the things that's important is, with the Latina entrepreneurs, today we have a current SBA appointed by President Biden, who is Latina, and then the first Latina SBA to hold that cabinet position
Wow.
is a mentor of mine, and she's in my book, Aida Alvarez, and she's incredible. And one thing that I've learned from influential Latina leaders like Aida is you always have to be in communication. And today, it's not any different under COVID-19, because if we think of it in terms of changing communication, then we're going to lose the fact of reaching out. And so the message never changes. The message always stays. Stay not only inspired, but really have, like, for example, a business plan. And the business plan has to be within your passion framework. And what I mean by that is, for example, if there's a person that just right away has this goal and dream to pitch to a venture capitalist and angel investor, and they're pushing the cart right ahead of the plan, then it's not sustainable. What one person really has to do as Latinas is look at a team of who, if you're going to, for example, be a consultant, then start as a sole proprietor And if you're going to transform your consultant business to a business that is going to, for example, provide human resources consulting to ERG groups, then if you want to grow a team, it's very important, as I say, to grow a team with 5 people you trust. And the 5 people you trust have to be people that aren't in it just for the money, because passion follows money. Money doesn't follow passion is first. And if your first motivation is about the income, then really what you're doing is you're short-sighting your goals, your business plan. So it really is important to have not only the passion, but have strategy. And strategy is key. And for strategy, it's aligned with execution. And without execution, there's really no pushing through, a wall or a ceiling. And it really is important to have all of your elements in place. And so for Latinas are outgrowing small business owners and other races and other ethnicities at a faster pace.
Wow.
Yeah. And so one thing that's going to be exciting is soon, hopefully in a year, there'll be some more reports from the SBA on those exact numbers.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you have shared that very important information, but as a Latino and as a woman and as a founder, I know that there is still walls, that are put in our way, and it's not as easy to get access to capital or opportunities. It's not impossible, but where will you send people? How would you recommend people to get capital infusion in their businesses? How can a founder get try to find opportunity or find opportunity to get that financial help that is all most of the time what is stopping the success of someone? Because many times you can meet someone who's very smart, someone that is has a great idea, but they don't have the means to bring their business or their products to market. I know that you're a part of an you're on the board of angel investment group. Is that right?
Yeah, it's called Angeles Investors. And so I'm on the advisory. And one of the things that they want to see is traction in terms of, the angel investor, the venture capitalist, a return of investment. So you really want to look at, for example, understanding how to scale your business. In other words, don't try to outgrow when you can't control. Don't outgrow what you can't control, and really have a product that you feel in terms of not only productivity and as far as capital that you earn, really report your earnings. And with that, I would be happy to be access to folks, Latinas out there, to send me messages when we have our pitch competitions, 4 of them per year. And the thing is this, is when someone applies for pitch competitions, before one applies, like I had mentioned, it's really important to look at studying your own business to see if there's reported earnings that are going to really attract an angel investor or a venture capitalist, because it really is like a Shark Tank. It really is a game where you have to be the person that is in control of your destiny, in control of your business. Now, there are other ways of, making income. And I always say that don't feel that your business has to be successful based on the fact that a venture capitalist angel investor is interested in your business. You are in control of your business and making sure that you are the person that could scale the business to say, I'm going to report certain earnings within this next year, within these next 2 years. And so it's really up to the individual. So I, in the Silicon Valley, always advise folks not to just fall for that Silicon Valley dream to say, oh, I need an angel investor or venture capitalist to be successful. That's not the case. I'll give you a perfect example. the founder of Guitar Hero, you know, the famous Guitar Hero, he self-financed his business when it started, and he didn't have VCs. And by self-financing, you know, he sold his business to Red Octane for over 300 million, right around there. And so it really is about control over what your product is and really being passionate about it. So you do have to have, I want to mention, an exit strategy if you want to pitch to VCs, because your exit strategy is, like I said, you know, you see a VC as a person that goes to a blackjack table, you know, their exit strategy is they want a winning hand, right? And a VC has the same exit strategy in acquisition for your business and saying, okay, well, what am I going to earn from investing in you? And so they don't just throw money around. So there has to be a strategy. So there's a strategy if you want to approach a VC, an angel investor. B, the strategy is, do you want full control over your business? And that's completely up to you, because I'll give myself as self-transparency. You know, I'm an LLC, so I'm keeping Tiempo as an LLC as we speak.
Wow. I find when I first started my business, as someone asked me that question, I was like, no, I want to be the owner of my business forever, right? I think that also culturally we have that mentality when we start a business, and we, as you most likely know, we invest everything we have, our money, our time, our knowledge, and try to hold on to that. And I learned that many times it's healthy and it's good to actually start thinking about having that exit strategy. But I think also because, like, my children are first generation here in United States. I was born in Mexico, but I was raised here, so I'm kind of like in between. But um, those children that are growing up first generation as yourself, I talk to a lot of young people that are going into business. They're founders, and I think we as Hispanic, Latinos, or minorities, we have less chances and opportunities to have mentors, to have this type of knowledge,
Yeah.
this type of, you know I have met young people, you know uh, Caucasian people, that these young people already know how business are handled because their parents, their friends, or they have all this knowledge that to them is natural. How can we influence our young Latino community? What can we do? I mean, I try to do that. I do my part, but what would you recommend, or are there programs that you recommend, and that we could, you know, use to influence our young generations of Latinos?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I am a full transparency and a full, as you have been saying, with our building of a relationship on LinkedIn, as far as, you know, business relationship. It's important for me uh, to have and continue having the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit for those reasons, because I think one one thing we need to do is build an ecosystem. And when I say the ecosystem, is a collaborative for business entrepreneurship that really is about building wealth. And how we do that is building trust first. You had mentioned something that was very important. You want control over your business. And I think one thing is for sure is we have to really build the the collaboration with one another and say, you know, I want to invest in you and you invest in me. And this is what we're doing right now. You know, we're having a conversation that is about investing in human capital. And human capital is where it starts. And human capital is about relationships. And then secondly, it's about, okay, you know, this person really is authentic, es sincero y es una persona, buena persona, como mi papá dijo, buena onda, ¿verdad? Eh, and it's really that takes us to the next step. And we, if I could say, we as Latinos, Latinas need to replicate what the Jewish community is doing. The Jewish community, when they got to Hollywood, they said, you know, they were blackballed, and then then they became entrepreneurs, and then they built wealth in Hollywood.
Yes.
And you know, a lot of the actors back then, Ricardo Montalban and other Latino actors, helped build that wealth for them.
Yes.
And so what I'm saying, like Rita Moreno, we need to bring it back and say, wait a minute, we have the talent. Yeah. Just like our brothers and sisters, the African American, the Black community have talent, where we collaborate with one another. As I had mentioned when we started off with my brother Harold LaFall, he's the one that inspired me to say, well, Frank, I did a book on the Black community, you do one on the Latino community. So it really is about building that ecosystem in terms of, if you see like a ecosystem, a big bubble,
yes,
it's like in that big bubble, what I have seen in Latino community is what I call different silos. And all these silos are fragmented and they're going everywhere. So within that big bubble, I say we all come together and say, los dominicanos, los puertorriqueños, los cubanos, los de Argentina, los de Colombia, los de Mexico, we're all the same. At the end of the day, we want equity, we want equalization.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do have to say something though. You know, you said you're Mexicana, and folks that from South America or certain regions that come with wealth, they are stripped of their wealth when they come to the United States. Because I know certain folks that are friends that came from Colombia that had status in Colombia, but when they came to the US, they were stripped of it. So they started all over again. And what I'm saying there is we understand one another as Latinos. We are all in this together.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to have people like you, and I have watched so many of your interviews and how you and others help these young people and give them advice, and you invest in the young generation. You mentioned it in your book, passing the baton, uh, and making sure that this new generation becomes empowered and take advantage of all the programs and all the opportunities that the previous generation didn't have, and the times. One thing that I'm grateful for is for what President Biden just did, and I think that these coming years, hopefully, I'm not wrong, hopefully, are full of opportunities for minorities, for our Latino community, and hopefully everything that is happening right now helps all these young people that are eager to succeed and eager to you know to do with the same equality as other communities. So I mean, we're almost at the end of the interview. I wish I could do 2 hours because I have so many questions, but um, what would be 3 words of wisdom that you will share with the Latino community that are watching us or will be watching us, or 3 or advice that you will
Yeah. Be humble, stay hungry, and be consistent. Those 3 are so important because many of the times we forget about the humility, we forget about how it all ties to consistency, and being consistent is so key. So in other words, you can't be, a person that's not going to walk the walk. You really have to talk the walk the walk, and be a person that is accessible, and who you are today is who you will be tomorrow.
Wow. Thank you. So if someone wants to get a hold of you, how can they get in contact?
Yeah, they could Frank Carbajal at LinkedIn, Frank, and then Carbajal is Carbajal. And then my email is frank at estiempo, frank at estiempo. And when we post this, I'll have my Twitter handle. I don't have it in front of me, but any of those two, they could directly get a hold of me.
Wow. I'm going to continue the talk with you, and hopefully we can have a cafecito in person when I come up,
Yes.
up north. Thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for all the work that you're doing in our community. And well, I mean, I hope that we can continue this, have probably a part 2. Thank you, Mr. Carvajal. Muchas gracias. Que Dios lo bendiga.
Gracias y buen tiempo y bendiciones a todos. And I had a really great time. I really appreciate you and Christiana and the whole team. And it was fun. It was really great to have this cafecito and this discussion today.
Thank you.